Steve, thank you for sitting down with me as we look back on what has been a quite incredible year on the pitch. How do you reflect on it, 2021?
Yeah, it was a good year. Listen, to be involved in the first major tournament in 23 years was good for the country. To finish the World Cup qualifying campaign the way we did, 6 consecutive victories at any level, tough. At international level, especially tough. So I think overall we look at the year, we can be satisfied with our work, but we can't be complacent because we need to do it all again next year.
Of course, that's the momentum that you carry into it though, off the back of those 6 wins, isn't it? That's, to end the year in that manner is huge for what comes ahead.
No, it's what you want. You want to keep improving. I remember speaking early in March. We had to play the World Cup qualifiers before the tournament. Obviously, the schedule's a little bit mixed up. But I remember speaking and saying we'll be a better team for the involvement in the tournament. We'll be a better team for having spent 3-4 weeks together as a group of players rather than just the normal 10 days. And thankfully that turned out to be the case later in the campaign. So keep improving, keep working hard. I always say to the players, stay humble, respect your opponents and then go out and try and beat everybody. And thankfully in 2021 we were reasonably successful at that.
Yeah. How much of a shift have you seen when you take it back to this time last year? We'd obviously secured our place at Euro 2020, but we lost those 2 Nations League games at the tail end of the year. But the way we've ended this year, have you seen a massive shift in the momentum and the attitude of the team in general, do you think?
No, I think obviously the night in Serbia was key for us. Was a big moment. It was like getting rid of the jinx that had been hanging over the national team for so long. So it was important to get rid of that, which we managed to do. I think the 2 Nations League games after that, although we played well in both games, we didn't quite have the killer instinct to get the results that we needed. And you probably look at it and say, well, if we lost in Serbia, we would have got the points necessary to win the Nations League campaign. You could say that. I mean, it's easy to say that. It might not have happened. We might have lost all 3 games. But in my head, I think that winning in Serbia, I'm not saying the boys relaxed, but you just didn't have that killer instinct to get something out of the game in Slovakia and the game in Israel. Yeah. And it was important not to forget what we had achieved, but it was also a little reminder that if you drop below your standards at international level, you don't win matches. So we carried that into 2021. And although people will say that we started slowly in the World Cup qualifying campaign, I was actually quite satisfied with it. The home game against Austria was a tough game. We needed a late goal for John McGinn to get a draw. Turned out to be a decent point. And the draw in Austria was a good performance and a good point. And that's the way it turned out.
People will talk about, they'll obviously look at Euro 2020 and that was a hugely significant moment for the team, of course. But the more the team have been around each other off the pitch at that tournament, being that team that you spoke about, what does that actually do for the team? You as a manager, yes, but what does it do for the players, do you think, being around each other?
It just brings them together. They get to know each other better as people. Obviously you can spend more time on the training pitch, so they get to know each other better as players. They get to trust one another probably a little bit more, because they all go back to their clubs after the 10-day international camp, and their own managers have got their own ideas, and everybody will play in different styles and different manners, so they'll have different ways of approaching their work. Whereas when we come together, we try and have our way, and the longer they're together, then the more they'll buy into our way, and at the moment it seems to be quite successful, so fingers crossed it continues into 2022.
Is it no surprise to you, Steve, that after that tournament and after building everything that you have, that you could argue that we've seen perhaps some of the best performances under your reign after Euro 2020, when you look at Austria away and Denmark here at Hampden as well? Massively significant performances and results.
No, I think, like I said, it was always a case where I felt that the tournament would make us better. It didn't look that way when we went to Denmark in the first game, where it was a tough night for us. That was the most difficult week for me in terms of preparation, with injuries, call-offs, COVID, was really tough. And people don't see what happens behind the scenes and how difficult it is to try and shape up and get a team ready for what was a really tough game against a Denmark team that were on a high coming out the Euros, a really big high. It was a tough night for us. But even in that game, and we got criticised for the game, but even in that game, there was a lot of good things that the team showed me, and they showed about their spirit, their character, and we carried that into the last 6 games in the tournament. And like you say, big win in Austria, it was massive. But we'd put ourselves in a position where we had to do that. The pleasing thing for me is if you put yourself in a position where you need to do something and you can do it, then it shows you're a good team.
Yeah, and I remember you speaking after the Denmark game, after we did lose that 2-0, there was a sense of frustration, wasn't there? Not at the performance of the team, but actually the criticism that did come, because you were insistent, we're building something here. It's hard when you get that criticism, obviously, isn't it?
I could see it. Listen, a lot of people were trying to point the finger at the tournament in the summer and saying that it wasn't good for us, the first game against the Czech Republic. I've watched the game back more than once. There was nothing in the game. You know, it was a game of football where the breaks went for them and didn't go for us. And then you find yourself in the back foot. We had to go to Wembley and make sure that we got something from the game, which we did. But it was a massive physical effort, and it probably took a little edge off us going into the Croatia game here at Hampden. There was more pivotal moments in that game. At 1-1, we had a fantastic chance at the back post, and John McGinn, to this day, can't tell me why he went for it in the manner he did, and John will tell you himself he should have scored at the back post, and suddenly if you go 2-1 then the game can change, but it didn't. It's football, you know, and Modric did what Modric can do. They're a quality team, no shame to lose to a quality team, and the tournament didn't quite work out the way we wanted, but in terms of development and progress for the national team, the tournament was massive. It brought us together, it gave us more time working together, and I think we showed the results of that. When we had to get good results towards the end of the World Cup campaign, we won 6 games in a row, which is no mean feat. And
ended with three clean sheets as well, which we could talk about. We could dissect probably all these games, but I want to touch on off the pitch in terms of the transition that you've had to go through as well with your coaching staff. That's another massively big moment for a manager to have to make that transition, isn't it?
Yeah, when you think the staff that I started with, and even after the Euros, and Stephen Reid left us, went to concentrate on his job full time at Forest, which is understandable. Stevie Woods wanted to concentrate on his job at Celtic with the new manager coming in, which is also understandable. John Carver decided to stick with me, which is great. I'm now worried about losing John, because since John came in September 2020, and since then the team has improved, and John's been important in the evolution of the team. Chris Woods has come in over the summer to take, or when Stevie Woods left, Chris Woods came in to take on the goalkeeping role. He's been good. His goalkeepers have been good. Craig Gordon especially has been outstanding for us, and I think they've enjoyed working with Chris, the goalkeepers. So that was a good appointment. Credit to Chris for coming in and doing the job. But he already knew a little bit about Scottish football, having been up here and played for Rangers, so he understands the dynamic of Scottish football, which was important. And then after the tournament in the summer, I decided I needed a different type of coach to replace Stephen. Being an older coach, someone from probably a different generation, I sort of looked at it and said, right, okay, how can we improve? Set plays is one area I thought we could improve. I've known Austin McPhee quite a long time, since I moved back to Scotland and worked with Kilmarnock. Austin was at Hearts, so you have a little relationship, you get to know people. And I decided that we'd take a punt on a set play coach, and it has worked out quite well for us. It's been interesting.
Yeah, there's been some special moments from set pieces, hasn't there? But there's been some...
for and against.
I'm sure you'll have a word with Austin about both. But when you look at some of the significant moments throughout the year, Steve, is there a moment that really stands out for you in terms of when you reflect on it? Do you allow yourself to really reflect as a manager much? Not really, because you're always looking. You're always looking to the next one. You try and enjoy the moment, but the moment probably passes quicker for the manager or the head coach than it does for everybody else, because they can enjoy it a little bit more, whereas I'm thinking about the next one. The biggest thing for me over the course of the year was the connection between the supporters and the players. That for me, that was massive. And if we took one thing out of 2021, it would be that connection. Even here at Hampden, we were only 12,500 in the stadium. You could feel the love of the support. They wanted the team to do well. They were disappointed when they didn't, but you could feel that they wanted this group of players and this team to be successful, this squad to be successful. Took that to Wembley with 2,500, probably a little bit more, Tartan Army members, and they loved it. You know, they really bought into it, and it probably peaked with the Israel game here. The last minute goal, you score a goal in the last minute, everybody goes daft anyway. But the fact that 50,000 people had stayed to injury time to see if we could get the winning goal, for me was a big moment. The atmosphere after that game was incredible.
You just got to look. I'm not big on media or social media or whatever, but you only have to have a little round of that and see the reaction of the Tartan Army was great, and we backed that up with a good performance at home to Denmark. Similar reaction for the crowd at the end, and it just feels as though the players and the crowd have come together again, which is fantastic after a number of years where maybe that wasn't always the case.
Can there be, I'm sure you'll be extremely proud of the year as a manager, but is there added pride when you look at the challenges? You talked about the fans, probably one of the hardest years for supporters in terms of not being able to get into some games, and obviously the challenges that COVID has presented. Has that been one of the hardest spells as a manager in terms of dealing with all the dynamic that comes with the virus and everything as well, and yet producing these results?
I don't know. I'll probably look back on it in years to come and think that was a tough time or whatever, but when you're in the moment, you just deal with it. Yeah. So you have to deal with it. No crowd, people calling off with COVID, always that threat, testing every couple of days, lots of tests when you're in camp, making sure that everybody's following the rules, try to stick to the protocol as best you can. Yeah, it's been a tough time, but it's something I'll probably look back on later in my life. If I ever write a book, there'll be a chapter in there on that.
There will be, I'm sure. And just to start to wrap up, Steve, yes, we've done a bit of reflection, but looking forward, March is huge. We know that. We've got our Nations League group now as well. Looking forward, what can you get most excited and enthusiastic about when there is a bit of a break between the next game?
For now is just to hope that all the players play well for their clubs, stay in form, don't get injured. I mean, obviously between beating Serbia and getting to the Euros, we lost Kenny McLean and Ryan Jack, two key players out of the squad. You don't want to be in that situation going into the March qualifiers. You want everyone fit well, playing well for their clubs. What I want is, when I sit down to pick my squad in March, is I want to be faced with really difficult choices. I think we've increased the depth of the squad, the quality of the squad, and I want them all fit and available so that I've got a really difficult task to pick a squad that hopefully can win 2 more matches and make the final 2 steps to Qatar 2022.
I just want to quickly touch on the players that you spoke about there. Obviously Ryan Jack, Kenny McLean suffering injuries, but I know from having spoken to a few of the players just how well connected they all kept, that Jack was still part of the squad, it felt like, with the way the boys treated him, and Andy Robertson taking that skipper role on and keeping him a part of it. Is that something you take a lot of kind of role in, or is that?
I think it's important. I think it's important not to underestimate the parts that people have played. You know, Lee Griffiths hasn't been in many squads recently. Ollie McBurney hasn't been in many squads recently, but they both scored important penalties against Serbia. So they're all part of the journey, and it's important not to forget everybody who's been part of that journey.
Absolutely. Well, Steve, 2022 is set to come round. We wish you all the very best for next year, and thank you again for your time.
Thank you.